Brian usually sits on this side.
Yeah.
So when we do the podcast, Brian's here, I'm there, and Rick's there, and we don't. And that Jeff does this for the GT podcast. I don't do this.
Right. So the easiest way to find out which ones are which is we can just feed back to where.
Well, no, I think I got it because 1's going, 3's going, and 4's going.
Yeah, because I'm 4. I know I'm 4.
You're 4?
I'm 3. I can see the cable.
Yeah, it's okay. We're good.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, this is Deadzone the podcast. I'm Rick. Brian is not here today. We actually have Rick from Thunderforge Studios with us, and we also have Alex from Rest Nova.
Yep.
And we are here to talk about Warzone Eternal.
Welcome to the Deadzone podcast. Deadzone is the sci-fi tabletop.
That's correct.
What is that?
Well, that's a big question.
That's a big loaded question. First off, I think before we even get to that, we was like, who are you?
Who is Alex?
Who is Alex? And what is Res Nova Games?
Absolutely. So Alex Kanous, I'm the president of Res Nova Games, which is kind of a big title for a very small company. But Res Nova is a small publisher based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Nice.
We're currently working on bringing out Warzone Eternal, which is a new miniatures game set in the Mutant Chronicles universe.
Awesome.
Very cool.
So, Alex, how long have you been in gaming?
Since you wore swaddling clothes?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I ever did. I'm not that old. I think by the time I was young, we moved beyond swaddling clothes.
Oh, just me?
Yeah, just you, Rick.
Just you, yes. No, about 3 decades now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So what got you into it?
Finding a Dungeons & Dragons basic box set in the basement, because my dad was a big fan of Lord of the Rings. And my mom was like, well, I don't know what this D&D thing is. This looks cool. Bought it for him, and then it sat in the basement for like 10 years.
Nice.
Oh.
And then I was a little nerd and was reading The Hobbit, and I walked down and I saw this really cool picture on a box set and said, what is this? Opened it up, and now here I am, 30 years later.
So was that the red box with Larry Elmore's
No,
dragon?
the preceding one, kind
the
of like the pinkish.
Yeah, with the I think it's LaForce art. Where it has like the serpent coming out of like an acidy thing, and it has the wizard and the warrior, and going up some stairs.
Yep, exactly
it's
right.
A great box.
Yep, it is. Yeah. So, but by the time I opened that up, and thought this is cool, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
The Elmore, the Beckme line was out. So my next one was the expert set from the Beckme line
with Isle of Dread.
Yeah, exactly.
So most of your gaming is role-playing then?
Well, it was to start.
Okay.
And then probably, I don't know, maybe 7-8 years after I started role-playing, increasingly had seen miniatures, right? Arthur miniatures, Grenadier miniatures, thought they were really cool for role-playing. And then I wandered into a shop one time when somebody was playing, I think, a game of Warhammer Fantasy.
Okay.
I was like, whoa, what is this? And and that was it. And so I've gotten much more back into role-playing in the last 10 years. I think a lot of us have.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been primarily miniatures games for 25 years or so.
Wow. That's crazy. 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about gaming in the hobby, to stick to something for that long is pretty impressive. But the thing is what was the steps that you took to go from hobbyist to now owning a company, and why?
So you play games just like the rest of us. And at some point you decided you wanted to have your own company? Is it like, walk us through that, because that's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, So I would actually say that it's probably not super crazy, right? Because I think I think the step is pretty small.
Okay.
You sit down with any group of gamers, whether they're people that just got done with the D&D session or people that just got done playing, a game of Fantasy Battle or 40K. Well, I guess Fantasy Battle doesn't exist anymore, but yeah. So
but they can play Kings of War.
Absolutely. So a group gets done playing anything, right?
Yeah.
And there's always one or two people there who's dissecting the experience, and not like why they won or lost, but things that they don't like about the the gameplay experience. Like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a phase that you could do this? Or, man, I really wish that this was written slightly different. And so that interest in talking about tweaking games leads to writing things down in notebooks about tweaking games. Which turns into, man, guys, I want you to try out my homebrew miniatures game. It's really awesome, and I think it's better than anything out there.
So you were that guy?
Yeah, absolutely. I was that guy. And so then, from there, it's really just a matter of, okay, what's the thing that I actually want to produce, right? Because I think a lot of it is, you spend the time tweaking things, coming up with ideas, but you don't do anything with them, and that's absolutely fine. I think the creative energy that gets released by just exploring that aspect of gaming is really, I think it's good for people. I think it's where great ideas come from. But the step, right, to actually say, okay, now I want to produce something. I think that's where most people just like, I don't want to do that.
That's a little too much.
Well, that sounds like work.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. So, but we had a really cool idea a couple years ago for a card game, Dungeon Slayer, and we've still been working on it. It's had to take a step back because Warzone Eternal has been such a all-encompassing project. But with that, we realized, okay, a card game is relatively small. You can produce that without expending massive amounts of resources. Yeah. It's quick to play. Takes up a minimal amount of space on a gamer shelf. So let's start with something like that.
Okay.
And so that we'd worked towards that. We got an amazing artist, Brian Despain. He's worked on just about anything you could imagine in the gaming industry, but also he's a fine artist as well. And so he was doing the artwork for us. One of my buddies is a longtime graphic designer in the game industry and outside of the game industry. So we had this really cool little collective that was almost, believe it or not, almost entirely on our street.
Wow.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
Well, that's one of the things that, having moved back to Michigan recently, in the last year and a half, but I had been gone for 30 years, right? And coming back, I was like, I don't remember there being this much gaming in Michigan or gaming adjacent in Michigan. And it's like, I can right now name off 20 different entities in Michigan that are gaming or gaming adjacent.
Yeah. Well, I think
there's a lot of it.
It's crazy.
I think the amount of professionalism that you see in the game industry in Michigan has absolutely increased. But what I'd say in general is Michigan has been probably one of the, I don't say like Holy Land, that's totally wrong. But it is 100% been one of the hotbeds for gaming for as long as gaming has really been a larger
Palladium, FASA.
Yeah, but I mean, like if you look back, and it's funny.
Chaosium.
There was a Chaosium. There was one of the guys who owned a game store back in Metro Detroit that I went to for years as I was growing up. I had, after he passed away, I ended up looking online, like just kind of what had Al been up to, right? Stories about it, and I literally found a newsletter that was produced on, I think it was a monthly or maybe twice a month basis, that was trying to collect reports of all of these like very early late 1970s D&D games that were being played around Metro Detroit to kind of create like this newsletter. And
really,
yeah, and so it's all these people, like hundreds of names in there, right?
Wow.
And so it's this really cool record that you could find, and I think that there's a reason why there are so many game companies in Michigan, so many game companies in southeastern Wisconsin, right? We have to do something when it's snowing.
Correct.
I mean, you can play hockey.
Nah,
You could.
You could, yeah.
Right.
You could.
You got to find somebody who's going to condition some ice for you, and then you got to tell your parents, I would like to participate in the single most expensive sport there is.
Yeah.
That's about all I did.
That's all you did because that's the only thing you. Okay, I got all my hockey equipment. I can't do anything else.
Yeah, Alaska's a little bit colder.
That's true.
Hey, this is Community Pat, and you're listening to Deadzone, the podcast with Rick and Brian.
That's super cool. As far as like that when you think again about the pedigree of Michigan and gaming, and that you've entered into that by starting the company, taking on a license that has been around since the mid '90s, early '90s.
Early '90s, yeah.
So, how long has the company been alive?
Resnova?
Yeah.
So we've been, I think it's 4 years.
Okay.
I think it's 4 years. And
4
so,
years, okay.
I mean, during the entire time, right, we've been in development on something. And so Dungeon Slayer was the first one. We got really close. We demoed the game. We exhibited the game at PAX.
Oh, okay.
PAX Unplugged twice. We were at the First Exposure Playtest Hall at Gen Con. So we had moved quite a ways forward with this.
Yeah.
And then the opportunity for working on the Warzone license came up. And for me, going back to, I don't know if this is the correct term, but the Holy Grail license for me, when I found myself in conversations about that and realizing that, well, maybe this is something we could work on, it meant that as much as I really enjoyed what we created for Dungeon Slayer, that had to be backburnered, because this is one of the most important IPs.
This is the
for
passion
me.
for
you.
you.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Nice.
Okay, so what is Mutant Chronicles Warzone?
Okay,
What is that? Because is it fantasy? Is it sci-fi? Because so far you've talked a lot about a fantasy that you grew up with.
Yep.
So what is Mutant Chronicles?
So Mutant Chronicles is a broad intellectual property that was produced by Target Games back in the early 90s. And,
okay.
Yeah, and so it's
been around a while.
It has, absolutely. The game really got its first foothold in the industry and the gaming community as an RPG. And there had been a few RPGs prior to that. They were all Swedish RPGs. Mutant Rymd. I probably am RYMD. All of those were in Swedish. Yeah. And as that game continued to evolve, one of the things that was evolving with it was the lore behind it, right? Like it would be like if Dungeons and Dragons was going through repeated editions. So let's say from OD&D to first edition, AD&D to second edition, AD, and each time they did that, the world that game took place in was evolving in turn, and not evolving slightly, like evolving as in we've rewritten entire aspects of it. Right?
Oh, okay.
And so each one of those games was kind of a different iteration, and eventually they released a game called Mutant Chronicles. And Mutant Chronicles there was a first edition of the RPG, a second edition that came out a little bit later, but it established this far future, sort of dystopian future where all humanity, for the most part, all humanity has escaped Earth. We've despoiled Earth. We've taken all of its resources. I mean,
So here's that throwback to the podcast. So Earth became a dead zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I don't. We've talked to a couple of the people who worked on early development for Chronicles. So names like Matt Forback, which a lot of people in the gaming industry know. Yeah,
I know Matt very well.
I think a lot of people do. And if you don't know Matt Forback, if you look at your shelf, you probably own a Matt Forback product.
At least one.
Yep, exactly.
Nice. Just for anybody out there that does not know who he is the lead designer behind the new Marvel 66 role-playing game that Marvel is putting out.
And
he's written stuff for Star Wars, Marvel, was it DW or the DK books?
Yep.
The DK books, like the official guide to Captain America.
Yeah, I think he did in the Marvel character encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But I've joked about with Matt that I think he's responsible partially for where I'm at, because he in the 90s touched on almost every property that I loved. I mean, he worked on Space Hulk for Games Workshop.
Yep.
All right.
He developed Silent Death for Iron Crown Enterprises. All of these miniatures games that are just like, oh my gosh, these are so amazing. And then there's just a consistent thread.
Yeah.
And Forbeck's name just kept coming up. But so I haven't had a chance to talk to some of those guys about what some of their, design or, writing philosophies were when they were creating this background. But there's sort of like a environmental morality tale happening with, the basis of Mutant Chronicles, right? We have literally just destroyed the planet in our attempt to...
Done.
Yeah, and so the entities that arose from that are these massive mega corporations that each one of them kind of takes on a certain geographic
aspect,
cultural feel to them. Yeah, because they all sort of stem from different parts of the world that they have now destroyed. So they all flee. They establish a massive city on Luna. Luna City becomes the largest city that humanity has ever created. They begin terraforming the rest of the inner planets, and then eventually, in their continued desire to expand and to consume more, they run into something that turns out to be a safeguard, right? Holding back something from another dimension. And so hey, what's this? I don't know, but we're continuing
we're going to open it and find out.
We're screwing up the rest of the solar system. Let's pop the lid. And in doing so, they unleash this thing that disrupts technology. All artificial intelligence suddenly turns on humanity. So they're like, whoa, okay.
Oh, so kind of almost like a reset button.
A little bit. Now,
From tech.
Yeah, so I think about like a reset from a super, super high advanced sci-fi future, right? With thinking machines that are helping dictate how just culture, how communities operate. Now all that goes away. So you end up going back to a 1980s, 1990s level of technology, right?
Oh wow!
But with spaceships. So
sure,
yeah. And so
just the idea of thinking of my daughter and my son going back to the 90s.
Yeah.
They wouldn't know what to do.
Well, and so, one of the things that they did was they really leaned hard into kind of a retro aesthetic, but not like, we're not going to be steampunk or we're not going to be diesel punk, right? They really leaned into this sort of like Art Deco, the buildings all look like they're from like downtown Detroit or like the Empire State Building.
But blighted.
Yeah. The cars look like, old 1930s roadsters. And it's got this really cool kind of, hyper classy look to a lot of it. But again, kind of this morality tale that's like, this is what you achieve if you work hard for your corporation. Meanwhile, in every one of the corporations, there's a varying degree of just, absolute destitution. Or, I think destitution is the right word.
Yeah. So, funny story in regards to this whole thing. As we're painting this picture, right? And when I started talking with Alex into this whole thing with the Mutant Chronicles, and he mentions there's this movie, right? Which I was like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen it. I like Thomas Jane. I think he's a fun actor. And some of the other actors.
And Ron
Perlman.
Yep.
Right? Who I love. I think he's amazing. Hellboy, right? And I was like, I will watch this. Thinking I might learn a little bit more about the history, the backstory, and all the the lore of this IP. And I was entertained. I will give it that. For what it was, I was entertained.
Sure.
But the one thing that I thought was so funny is in the movie, everybody's trying to get off world because of the threat of the Dark Legion or whatever, the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And they succeed and they get off planet, right? Because they destroy the key or the device in the movie, whatever. And so they are able to launch off planet, and they launched the bad guy off planet, but everybody has already kind of left. There was like this one unit left on Earth to kind of stomp out this threat. And they get it off Earth, and it launches up out of the ground into space, and it shows a tracking of it going to where the humans have just ran to at the very end. It's like its trajectory is taking it to Mars, where everybody is.
All right.
I was like, man, this is just a repeating cycle of just pain.
Yeah. No, I mean, I will say that movie took a lot of liberties with the canon.
That's good to know because
Yeah.
I did rewatch it a few months ago.
Well, you are a stronger person than I am. I think I've seen it once.
Okay, to be fair, it was on. It was on the screen.
It was on. Like, you didn't put it there? I've never actually seen it just
It was
appear
on cable.
TV. Wow. I've never seen it on cable.
It was on cable, and it was, I think, TNT.
Wow. Well,
Completely written. Now, this is also
where I
like
watched
2,
it, too.
3 o'clock in the morning.
oh, okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's where I watched it too. But I actually looked it up. But I think it was TNT or one of those like American movie classics.
Yeah, it was something random.
Right. And
I think American movie is the only accurate descriptor.
right. But I also feel like I've seen it because it was what clicked it in my mind. Oh, I actually should watch this. Is I was watching something that had Ron Perlman in it, and at the end when it says, "If you like this, you might like these other movies that he's in."
Oh,
and that
yeah.
was one of the ones that
yeah.
like picked up, and I was like, "Oh, hey, yeah, we've talked about this." They told me I should avoid it. No,
No.
Well, I mean, I think that's...
the stove's hot, son. You're right.
I think, what's interesting, right, is, part of the longevity of this property means that there's a lot of people who have worked on it, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Who have done things that they felt this was a more authentic interpretation, or we should go in this direction, or it needs a reboot. And so I think you have to be aware of all of it if you actually want to do tribute to the property.
Do justice.
But at some point, you have to decide which of these varying branches is the branch that you're going to say is the authoritative one you're going to move forward with.
It's wild.
So
which branch did you take?
I'm going to say Warzone Eternal.
Yeah.
So, and it's called Eternal for a reason.
Yeah, well, and so actually, yeah, we went down the movie path.
We did. We kind of.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So let me just.
That's what we do.
Yeah, I think random divergencies is fine.
Then you're on the right
Oh,
podcast.
okay. Oh, so there's going to be more?
Maybe.
I thought I was just being polite when I said that.
Well.
Hey everybody, John Jack here from Dreadball Commercials. You've seen me, you love me, you know you want me. Here you're listening to Deadzone the podcast with Rick and Brian. Don't turn that dial or I'm coming for you.
The role playing game
Yeah.
was really the big first thing, and so that did pretty well actually at that time. And then they started rolling out a number of board games, and there was a collectible card game, right? Magic exploded, so Target said, "Okay, let's do a collectible card game." And so they produced a game called Doom Trooper, which is an okay game, but it's a game that has actually somehow maintained a really significant following all the way to the point where there's actually a company, Secret Cow Level, who did a digital version of Doom Trooper. Which is awesome, right? Because now you get to see them come back, and they've taken a very similar approach where the classic art is what inspires them. If any of your listeners are looking for a digital card game to play, Doom Trooper's out there, and it's fun, right? It's super,
All right.
super
I'll have to check it out.
straightforward. Yeah, I mean it's an easy to play game. And so Doom Trooper came out. That did really well. I think they had 5 expansions for Doom Trooper.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was pretty big. And then they had a number of board games. One of them, kind of a classic at this point, called Siege of the Citadel.
Okay.
That was produced by, it was Pressman, I think, Target worked with. And that was specifically intended to, again, similar to Doom Trooper, following the Magic market. Siege of the Citadel was in response to seeing the games like Hero Quest doing really well. So that, and then in addition to that,
Sorry,
I wasn't sure, were we supposed to pause? Or,
No.
Oh, okay. Do I just keep talking?
Yeah, just keep talking.
Okay. And then really the last product that they produced, right, was Warzone. And Warzone was their tabletop miniatures game set in the Mutant Chronicles universe.
Okay.
So Siege of the Citadel had miniatures. There were 2 other smaller games, Fury of the Clansmen and Blood Berets, which were miniature board games. So those had miniatures as well. But Warzone was the first where they're like, we're gonna produce a tabletop miniatures game. We want to bring this universe to the same gaming fandom that plays games like 40K and Warhammer, and whatever other games were out at the time. And so that was Warzone First Edition. It did spectacular. I know that in the U.S. I was playtesting. I was running demos for it, working with Target at Gen Con. And so we really got to see like each year, like just the sheer amount of booth space at Gen Con that Target would take up. Watching that grow was a really cool benchmark. To kind of see.
So I need to interject real quick for the listeners. When you say Target, we're not talking about the big box store.
That's probably about the point.
The competitor to Walmart.
Right.
Target is was an IP holder.
Well, so Target was a publisher.
A publisher.
Yeah, so they
publisher. Okay.
They had a couple other games, right? In addition to all the Mutant Chronicles property, they had Cult, which was a pretty big kind of dark
like
horror.
Cthulhu-esque thing.
No, actually, less like Elder Mythos and more Hellraiser.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
It was really cool.
All right.
And they did
Wish I hadn't found that one back.
Yeah. Actually, I think somebody produced a newer version of that RPG.
Nice.
And then I think there was a Cult collectible card game as well. And what's interesting, right, is you talk to some people who were really heavily into Cult. Some of the we'll get to the Dark Legion in a second. Some of the Dark Legion baddies from from Mutant Chronicles were either inspired by or pulled wholesale out of Cult.
Oh, okay.
Which kind of then creates this Cult is supposed to be modern day, but with these demonic horrors. Now these demonic horrors are in Warzone. It's like, wait, which reality are we in? That sort of thing. But so you're right. Target is not the big box retailer. They were a.
I just want to make sure that I knew.
Yep.
Wink, wink. But I want to make sure that the listeners weren't confused by that.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I should have clarified who they. Yeah, so Target was a Swedish publisher too.
Okay.
So all this was coming out of Sweden, but then they had U.S.-based partners. One of them was Heartbreaker Miniatures. Heartbreaker Miniatures was started by Bob Watts, who had worked for Grenadier, had worked for Games Workshop US, basically knew everybody in the miniatures game industry. Yeah. And so in partnership between the two, he's the one who kind of helped bring Warzone into development. Okay. And so Warzone First Edition did awesome. Then they did a second edition, and it has a big giant box set with like 80 plastic miniatures in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was huge.
Okay.
And at that point, Warzone was at its height of popularity, and I believe the last year that they were around, or maybe it was about the same time, the last year they were around, or the first year that second edition came out, very similar time frame, unfortunately, they were actually outselling Warhammer Fantasy Battle in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big wow.
You're talking about 40K Warzone. And so...
That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, so the fact that there are this many passionate fans that are still out there, it's because there was a large player base.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then, unfortunately, Target was... And nobody has, obviously, the real understanding of what happened except for a handful of people.
Yeah.
But the general understanding was that Target was this larger organization with multiple divisions. Something happened somewhere else and basically just pulled the entire company down overnight, and that meant the gaming division went poof as well.
Gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And so since then, there's been a couple additional additions. There was a company called Excelsior who produced Ultimate Warzone nearly right after the end of second edition Warzone. Okay. They got the license really quickly. A company called Protos produced a version called Warzone Resurrection. I think that's been about 8-9 years ago. I think now they first started production. And then they that license went kaput after a while. So ultimately the opportunity comes to us, and we chose the name Warzone Eternal because one thing that has been obvious about this is that this game and the passion for it has just continued, regardless of the fact that games have come and gone, miniatures lines have come and gone, responsible publishers for the game have come and gone. The fans are there, and the opportunity to continue to develop it is still there.
Yeah. And it should go on for the rest of eternity.
Whether Res Nova's involved or not, right? I mean, the desire is to see this world continue to exist so that people can play in it.
Right. Well, I have a prediction on Res Nova and the Warzone Eternal thing. Is I think Res Nova is going to go supernova and blow up, and everybody's going to be like, that's going to be a known property, a known company out in the gaming space. I just like that word.
You're going to be a supernova fan.
I already am a supernova. I'm a fan of Res Nova, thus making me supernova, as all fans are.
Hey, I'm Chopper.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Rob.
From Mobile Armor Radio.
And you are listening to Deadzone the podcast with Rick and Brian in the morning.
Never heard of it.
I don't even know who those guys are.
So, yeah, once you get all your supernovas, what are you going to do with Mutant Chronicles Warzone Eternal that hasn't been done before? Or are you guys just kind of taking what's there and building on it?
So the first desire, right, is to just get a game that's in production.
Yeah.
We want people to be able to get into the universe in the way that I really first got into it, which is through a miniatures game.
Okay.
So once we've established that, the universe that this game is set in is huge. Mm-hmm. And there's all sorts of places that were completely
you brought a stack of books for me to check out. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, there's more to this than I thought.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's the amount of written material for Warzone, or that Warzone is based on, is pretty significant. So let's start exploring that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So first edition Warzone had a book called Dark Eden, which was about what does Earth look like, right? Because the corporations, for the most part, were just not going back to Earth, right? It's an irradiated wasteland. They abandoned people there when they left, right? But you go back and you start realizing, oh, geez, the Dark Legion, that extra dimensional force that had coursed through the solar system when one of the corporations had broken that seal.
Yeah.
They're all over Earth now, right? They've humanity has abandoned Earth. Okay, cool. We're going to use.
We're going to use it. We're taking it.
So there was a book, and it was cool, and it established some of what was going on Earth. But let's really explore that.
Yeah.
Let's dive into the various war zones. I mean, the game was called Warzone, right? But we didn't really get to see what a lot of the war zones were like. We didn't get to see how war zones were different, right? Mars is this giant red desert. Yep. Even when it's been terraformed, right? So there's these massive like trench lines surrounding Dark Legion citadels, and they're in like this perpetual state of warfare. Venus is this like steaming jungle planet, and so there's a
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and there's like this archipelago there, and it's very much got this World War II Pacific theater kind of a feel to it. So I mean, it's awesome, right? Each one of these planets, Mercury, where the Mishima Corporation is based, is completely underground because it's so close to the sun. They cannot terraform the surface. So you got these massive caverns that have been hollowed out underneath that are filled with cities, right? As big as New York City, and massive underground
everything underground.
Oceans. Yeah, I mean, so they're cool, right? They're really, really cool settings. So let's go play in there. Let's figure out how do we take a rule system that Brian's CP Steel and I have developed, and use that solid system as the basis to now start going off
to
in
exploring all the different
exactly
spots that you didn't get a chance to explore when you were a kid playing it.
Exactly right.
Sweet.
So that's what we want to do with the miniatures game. But I mean, if we get the opportunity, let's make board games again. Let's make card games again. Let's
do it all.
Do everything.
Puzzles.
Exactly. Yes, just a Razid smiling.
I'm a fan. That sounds amazing.
All right.
Coloring books.
Coloring books. All right.
I mean, we can go down the merchandise hole, but let's save that for another time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So, right now you've got a lot going on as Rasnova because you guys are ramping up for Adepticon.
Yeah, we are. So Adepticon.
You and Rick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, Adepticon will be the first show that Rasnova is at showing off Warzone. Right? Again, we've been at other shows before, but this will be the first time that we are actually stepping in front of a crowd and saying, this is Warzone Eternal.
Nice.
And so we'll be showing off a bunch of our prototype figures.
Okay.
The figures that will be going in the various starter boxes that will be part of the Kickstarter. And we'll be running demos all weekend long. And we've got Rick's got a bunch of cool ideas for fun
Rick has
things.
cool ideas. He always has ideas.
I mean, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun way not just to show off the game, but also to introduce people to Rasnova as a publisher, right? And maybe put some cool stuff in their hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And build up on some social media stuff. And one of the things I'm super excited about being a part of that and being a part of Rasnova and helping out as I can is we get to play on a really cool table.
We do.
I haven't seen pictures of it yet.
Wait, who's building your table?
Yeah, you have?
Yeah.
God.
Who's doing the table?
No, you go ahead and say.
Okay, I wasn't,
Yeah,
sure.
it's
Who's doing the table?
So Dave Taylor.
Seriously?
Yep.
yeah. So Dave,
Of course, this is the Adepticon I'm missing.
correct. Yeah.
Oh!
Well, and
My God!
And Dave Taylor, for anybody that knows, like if you've been to Gen Con or if you've been to PAX Unplugged in the last year, and gone to the Games Workshop booth, gone to
Modifius,
you would have seen his work.
Yep. Yeah. So Dave is a legend in the tabletop miniatures gaming hobby. I remember was introduced to him last year. And I was like, "Oh, geez, I don't know if I dressed appropriately for this." But no, he's an absolute genius hobbyist. His converted kind of kit bashed armies that he's produced for 40K over the years are legendary. He's produced books about painting and producing. Yeah, and then he's also an incredibly talented terrain builder. Yeah. And so he did a table for Modifius last year at Gen Con. He did two. Oh, did you do the Fallout one too?
He did Fallout and Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, the Elder Scrolls one was utterly amazing. Yeah. And so
brilliant.
we had the opportunity to talk to Dave about this, and he was
Nice.
totally on board. So Dave will be knocking out the table that we'll be running Warzone demos on.
That is so awesome.
I've
You've
always
got to get video.
Oh, of course.
'Cause
We're
I
gonna,
need to see
We're
it.
going to get lots of content for the booth and people demoing the game and
Right on.
everything, and holding up the walkaways that they might get.
Yep.
All sorts of stuff like that. But I used to paint with Dave on a show for almost 3 years. Twice a week we'd sit down for an hour and we'd paint miniatures, him and I. And I've never played on one of his tables. So I'm really excited to be able to demo a game that I'm helping with in the weird capacity that I do stuff on one of his tables and everything. So it's a geek out moment for me. Even though he's a friend, I'm still a fan of Dave, right?
Yeah.
So to be able to do that's pretty cool, and to have Dave do something for Rasnova, for Warzone Eternal, that's pedigree right there, and clout.
Yeah.
No, I mean
for Warzone and for Rasnova.
Yeah.
We have a Dave Taylor table, and people are like, "Oh shoot!"
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that Rasnova has been really fortunate in the friends that we've made and the other people who've shown an interest in what we're doing.
Yeah.
It helps raise all of us up, right? I mean, it gives us
Definitely.
a chance to do cooler stuff. Have rules developed by people who have written an absolute library's worth of games. It's been cool. I mean, obviously working on Warzone is super exciting to me just because again, I love this universe, but the opportunity to get to work with a bunch of people who I've known at arm's reach as a hobbyist, that's been a really cool experience as well.
Right on.
Well, he mentioned earlier Matt Forbeck as an example. So Matt has done content within the Warzone in the Mutant Chronicles world or verse in the past, and as someone who has, I think it's kind of neat how much he's also embraced and supported what you got going on, and the folks within this space that are like being good cheerleaders, right? And they want to see the success of it come to fruition.
That's awesome.
Through your efforts and the efforts of the team you put together.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who just generally love the universe because they had some level of involvement with it. But I think there's also just with a lot of these people, when they got the opportunity to experience it in whatever capacity that they did, they're like, this is really cool.
Right.
And I think all of those people, they just want to see this IP succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just want to see something cool come out of this. They want to see more people playing in this universe again because it's a place that they thought was fun. And and it's a shame that more people have not gotten a chance to experience it.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like more people at AdeptCon are going to get to experience it.
Yeah,
firsthand.
Swing by booth 904.
904.
All
right.
So we'll be easy. We're a corner booth, so it'll be easy to find.
Oh, perfect.
Yep. And to play the game, check out the figures, talk to us about what we're doing, how we're handling, their perhaps once upon a time favorite universe. That's absolutely.
Turn it into your favorite universe again.
Absolutely.
And then the weekend after that, if you come out to C2E2, if maybe Adepticon isn't on your calendar, but you can make it to C2E2.
Yeah.
Swing by the Paint and Take Arena in the vendor hall, and I'll be there at that one as well. And there might be a Warzone miniature that you can paint.
Oh.
Which is going to be really cool.
Yeah,
right on.
Rick is not allowed to leave Chicago.
Right.
He's getting there,
he's
and we're just
there.
leaving him there.
Yeah, that's right. It's a vacuum.
Good luck with that.
It keeps me there.
And
then what's the date on the Kickstarter again?
So that's the next piece. So you guys are doing a Kickstarter for this.
Absolutely. So we had done a Kickstarter last year and realized that there are some things about this that we could do better, and so we've spent the last 8 months doing just that. And so we're coming back to Kickstarter in May.
Oh, sweet.
Exact date has not been announced just because there's some logistic things that we need to figure out there. But it will be in May, so just about a year from when we did the last one. And so we're going to use every single day that we have available to us to refine this and try to create something that really hopefully is responsive to what the fans want, but even more so really what I would like to see.
Sure.
So,
I mean, it is your child now.
I'm the curator for
You're
it.
the
right
curator,
now.
okay.
There's a lot of people who have worked on this property for a long time, and I think that's is not to sound like sappy here, but the reality is it doesn't matter what edition of the game you might have first encountered Warzone. It doesn't matter which edition of the game that you like the best, or which edition you absolutely despise. All of the people who have worked on these various editions all did so because they loved this universe. And so,
that's a perfect reason to work on
it. Exactly. Yeah. And so I do not want to look at it and say, oh, this is my baby. No. I'm just the next person who gets to work on it.
Yeah.
Everybody who got to work on this in the past, every one of those people has contributed to the creation of this thing. And that's a really awesome way to look at it too.
Yeah, you're the current torchbearer.
Yeah, exactly.
Torchbearer,
yeah.
I like that.
That works.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, as the torchbearer, what do you think about coming back on Deadzone, the podcast, more to talk about Warzone Eternal as you get closer to the Kickstarter, as the Kickstarter's going, and let the fans of our show learn some more about Warzone Eternal and potentially jump in as well?
As long as you guys will have me, I will be here. I mean, I love this universe, so the opportunity to sit around and talk to other gamers about this universe, anytime.
We're only going to limit it to once a month because that's all we can handle.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's how many times a month this podcast is broadcast.
Okay.
Well,
for now,
we'll see what happens.
Okay, if you find me sitting outside the door a couple days early, just throw me a bottle of water.
Well, what that tells me is your wife got mad. You're just going to come hang out with Rick.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Well, thank you for coming down and being on the show with us. We can't wait to hear from you soon. You have social medias for Res Nova.
Yep, it's pretty much everything. It's Res Nova Games.
Res Nova Games. Okay, I'll make sure.
Yes.
I'll make sure Brian puts that in the show notes because, I'm not editing this. Brian is doing all of that. I'll send it to Brian. He'll do that and put our social media on there, your social media on there,
Nice.
some Thunderforge Studio on there.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Like that.
Well, with that,
I also think it's pretty funny that Brian, as a punishment for not being here today, gets to do all that work.
well, it's part of how the podcast works.
Oh, okay.
Like, he does all the smart work, and I just sit there.
Nice.
And look pretty.
The pretty work.
And sure, we'll go with that. Well, thank you guys again. Have a great night, and don't forget to check us out on all the social medias.